So you missed it live or just want to listen to it again? Here is a Chai FM podcast just for you.
Dr. Les Glassman is head of the WITS alumni in Israel. The WITS alumni is one of the organizations that came together in Israel to organize a tribute to Nelson Mandela. The other organizations include Forum Sora and Telfed and the South African Embassy in Israel. The ambassador, His Excellency Sisa Ngombane, was one of the panelists. Dr. Les Glassman joins me now from Israel to talk about the event. Les, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Firstly, how are things in Israel?
Wow, so it's been a difficult week, as I'm sure everybody knows. Just this morning, 3 rockets were fired at Tel Aviv, and thank God they were intercepted by the Iron Dome. So when we planned this event, it was a long time that we took in planning every detail of the event. We didn't foresee that there'd be rockets being fired and what happened in the last week. So there were a few people that cancelled at the last moment, but a lot of people decided to come. And we had over 200 in attendance, which
amazing.
Is quite remarkable.
Liz, why did you decide on the event? What was the process leading up to a tribute to Nelson Mandela?
Okay, so I'll tell you, the event, basically, because I'm involved with the WITS alumni and Nelson Mandela spent 5 years studying law at WITS, it was very relevant that we should honor such an icon, such a very unique man. This is a person that, by his own example, he led the country from a potential chaos, a potential civil war, into peace and tranquility, and the democratic elections, which we're now celebrating 20 years of. And the evening and our ambition was to honor the man, to honor the legacy and the lessons of Mandela and its relevance to Israel, and basically to pay homage to this icon.
And you said over 200 people attended. Were they ex-South Africans living in Israel?
There were mainly ex-South Africans from all walks of life. Our idea was that everybody, irrespective of their political persuasions, where they on the political map, right, left wing, center, whatever, or religious for that matter, or in any way, that they should feel comfortable coming to the event to honor this giant, this very special son of South Africa that saved the nation, and to learn lessons from it that could be hopefully applicable to Israel and to basically to the rest of the world. His example is exemplary.
The event was opened, or one of the panelists was His Excellency Sisa Ngombane. What was his key message?
Okay, so Sisa's a very interesting, very, very special ambassador. He's followed on from Ambassador Kuvadia. I met Sisa Ngombane in his office a while ago, and then he invited me, and that's where I met you, when he had the South African media coming on a fact-finding mission to his residence. He's been very engaging. He wants to engage with the Israeli public and with all walks of Israeli public. So when he spoke, he was one of the keynote speakers at the event. Basically, he was so happy that we were having the event, especially at this time before Mandela's birthday, and he was very grateful that the South African community in Israel respected and do respect Mandela, and we wanted to learn the lessons that he gave. So all the key we had, can I mention who the other keynote speakers were?
Please, yes.
Okay, and just before I go on to that, Sharice, I'd really like to thank the Israeli Embassy in South Africa for organizing development. He opened the event by greetings from the State of Israel, and also they were very involved in arranging for Nick Walpe, he's the CEO of Ladies Leaf Farm, through Yad Vashem, to come to Israel and to be present at our evening. And we had Benjamin Pogrant, who I'm sure most of all our listeners know. He was the deputy editor of the Rand Daily Mail, and he knew Mandela. He knew him personally during the struggle, his incarceration, when he was president, and his retirement.
Wow.
And then we had somebody very interesting. We were going to have, his name is Professor Mohammed Dajani. Mm-hmm. He was a professor that took a group of Palestinian students to Auschwitz, which was a remarkable thing.
Right.
It was really something unique. And unfortunately, he was fired from Al-Quds University. And at the last moment, he had to cancel. But we had in his place somebody who was also absolutely incredible, Bassam Id.
Oh, yes.
So that was something, I must tell you, everybody was amazed at Bassam Id. He's the founder of the Palestinian Human Rights Monitoring Group, and his address to the audience was phenomenal, as was each individual keynote speaker. We had as our MC Tova Herzl. She was the first ambassador to Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, and she was the ambassador to the New South Africa in '94, and a very successful ambassador. She was wonderful, the way that she held the evening together. Before we had the evening, there were a lot of concerns because Telfed basically isn't a political organization. It represents all strands of South Africans living in Israel, and we didn't know how it would be. There might be extremists on either side. Everybody was welcome and everybody was invited. So we went into this event a little bit nervous, knowing that we didn't know what the outcome was going to be. We had a question and answer session that was open to the public, so everybody could voice their own opinions and views. You didn't necessarily have to agree with each other, but the panel could answer these questions. And some really good questions actually came about. And it was open to everybody, and it wasn't only open to South Africans. We had some Eritrean refugees who came to the event.
Wonderful.
They also voiced their opinions, but that we can get into a bit later. But basically with Sisa Ngombeni, he was the main keynote speaker. And he's a seasoned ambassador, a seasoned career diplomat, and he's been in many different locations. He spoke incredibly well on his personal relationship with Mandela. He actually mentioned just that during the struggle, he was nearly killed 10 times.
Wow.
So he comes with a history of a close association with Mandela. And what was amazing about Sisa Ngombeni, he emphasized the Jewish connection to the ANC and to the leadership. And that formulated, it had such a great impact on the leadership, not only of the leader, Nelson Mandela, but Walter Sisulu, other people in the ANC. And the contribution that the Jewish people made to the ANC in their struggle, he really emphasized it. And he was very proud to say that here he's in Israel, where he's sitting next to Nick Wolpe, whose father actually helped them in the camps when they were training. So it was quite amazing. He really showed a lot of gratitude to the Jewish community.
It sounds absolutely amazing. The only thing I'm thinking is wondering why I wasn't there, because all the speakers are people I know and are highly respected, and it does sound like an amazing event. What were you expressed a bit of nervousness that it might become a political event. Nothing could be more tense, I imagine, than Israel is at the moment.
Okay, so I'll just mention with the last week, I'm very fortunate. Our daughter, thank God, she was married a week before in Jaffa. Just a week later, we just heard and we saw there was a chuppah in Ashdod, and a rocket fell 200 meters away from where the chuppah was taking place. And during the chuppah, people had to evacuate. But God forbid that rocket could have fallen on the chuppah or the guests. There were 300 guests. It would have been a catastrophe. And only 200 meters away. It was a miracle, a total miracle. So this has been a really, for us, the week before when we had the wedding, it was incredible. We had a lot of South African guests that came that were just so amazed to see how Tel Aviv is and how the country is and how the people are and how open everything is. And a week later, we heard the news of the 3 teenagers, and we're still in the mourning period for Eyal, Naftali, and Gilad. Please God, may their memories be for a blessing. And we actually are reeling from the brutal, and it was really a despicable murder of the young Mohammed Abu Qadir. And I must mention, so many people, every person that I know is so upset about what happened to this innocent young Muslim kid. And nobody is happy that what happened. On the contrary, we're reeling from it. It's something that it's touched everybody's soul.
Les, just to get back to the function, did the function become an opportunity for political commenting or anything like that, or would the function remain?
I'll tell you, so Sisi Ngambeni, he said, he wanted to relate the lessons of Mandela and his legacy, and how he was prepared to compromise, and he basically said something which was quite amazing. He said, people realized in the ANC, they actually realized, and in all walks, they realized that it's only one country. South Africa is one country. People are going nowhere. The whites are not going to go to Europe, and the blacks are not going to go to the rest of Africa. They're going to stay in this land of South Africa. So that was the common denominator. That was basically the baseline. And he asked the audience, he said, is the same here? Do we have that same perception about the land here? And that's a problem. And I think because you have the one side, Hamas, that do not want the Jewish people to remain in the land of Israel. And in their charter, they ask for the destruction of Israel. So we try to make comparisons, and we want to try to learn lessons from Mandela. And there are many lessons to be learned, tremendous amount of lessons. And that also came from Benjamin Pogrund. If I could just mention, Benjamin is so articulate, and he just mentioned a statement, which, Cherise, can I just mention it to you? Because it is just, it's brilliant. He said, when Mandela emerged from prison after 27 hard years,
yes,
his generosity of spirit was personified in the fact that he did not beat the drum of racialism, he did not incite his people for calls for revenge, he quelled the anger amongst his own people. I remember he told people that they should throw their pangas into the sea.
Right.
And anyway, he led the people on a path of compromise and reconciliation. And then the ambassador also mentioned, and they all mentioned, that he didn't do it alone. He had a partner. F.W. de Klerk was a partner. You can't make peace by yourself. You have to have a partner. So I think these facts that Nick Walpe, when he spoke, he also spoke about the legacy of Mandela and his knowledge of Mandela and what an amazing person he was, and how he suffered so much in the prison. And when he came out, he was willing to forgive, and that's what he did. And he was willing to let to move on for the country. And I think here in Israel, if they wanted to connect how we in Israel can take the lessons of Mandela and also of the leadership, and to try and create solutions, because we're living through very difficult times here, but it's not that easy to equate. Both sides have to be willing. They have to be willing to talk to each other, to compromise. And I think one of the most amazing statements, and this came on, can I just mention, Cherise, there was it was handed out, the very unfortunate letter from the deputy, it was the deputy, she's the deputy secretary general of the ANC. And I think the board has written a very good response. So her letter, Jesse Duarte, was very insightful. It was extremely hurtful. So we had to deal with and that she brought out yesterday as well. So people were very aware that it's not such a simple situation that we're facing.
Les, I'm going to come back to that, but just before I do, you mentioned that the Eritreans asked questions. What kinds of questions did they ask?
So basically, the one Eritrean got up and he asked, because it was nice, in the question and answer session, and Tova Herzl handled it very well. It was open to anybody, from the right wing, from the left wing, from anyone. So the Eritrean got up and he said to the South African ambassador, he directed his question to him. He said, have you discussed with the Israeli government our treatment here and the difficulties that we are having? And I think the ambassador answered it as a diplomat very carefully and very cleverly. He said, Israel isn't the only country that has refugees. He said it's a very difficult situation. But he said a delegation of refugees did come to the Knesset and they were accepted at the Knesset. He said it's a long process and we have to work on it. And he said there are no easy solutions, but he says we are definitely aware of the situation. Then Benjamin Pogrund, he made a statement that a lot of the people agreed that as Jews and through our history of suffering and being in difficult situations. We should try to be more compassionate. So, and people applauded. So there are many lessons to be learned. And I think the ambassador and the panel, they handled the questions very well. There were questions which we can go back to with just Dewati, where it wasn't handled so well. It was asked to Nick Walpe, and Nick Walpe mentioned that we have to look at the history behind the ANC, that they were so close with the PLO, and but that was 20 years ago. People say that was 20 years ago. Now we've moved on, and somebody actually quoted Mandela, which he made the most amazing statement. He said, "In every dispute, you eventually reach a point when neither party is altogether right or altogether wrong, when compromise is the only alternative for those who eventually want peace and stability." And I think if we take the lessons of Mandela, it's a very sad reflection on the Secretary General to have written such an insightful and hateful letter that she did.
Les, it's a very inspiring quote by Madiba. You mentioned earlier the terrible events that have taken place in the Middle East, the murder, the brutal murder of the 3 boys, the subsequent murder of the young Arab boy, the rockets firing on. I just want to let everyone know that the Jewish Board of Deputies Facebook page has all the statements that have been issued around these issues, and strong statements have been issued. There is a lot of discussion on the Facebook page, and we are getting a lot of hatred coming up on it as well. So if anybody within our community would like to like our page, it's South African Jewish Board of Deputies Facebook site, please do so, and please feel free to join in the debate that is taking place on the website. Some of it is a bit ugly. You mentioned earlier how proud Ambassador Sisa Ngumbane was in the fact that Jews were part of the struggle. And now might be the time that people want to make those points on the Facebook site. Dr. Les Glassman, thank you so much for joining me. It sounds like a very inspiring event, not least because of what is happening in the Middle East. And we can always look to words from Madiba to give us encouragement.